Welcome back everyone to another Company Fears 2 replay cast, and it is going to be a 2v2 as you can already see. Let's get this right started up. It's Lazor's River. Of course it is the map with the bridge in the center, left and right. Of course two bridges can be destroyed, the crossing point in the center can't, and there's a lot of interesting talk going on. Of course Galleon Squad 422 is the one who sent in the replay, and yes, that is very racist. He's gonna, of course, play with Umbakant, both playing as the USF. On the enemy team, we're gonna have Feda Stake as the OKW and another OKW Plop Pop. So both of the Western Front's armies fighting it out, and that's interesting. So we're gonna have a bit of a showdown. Now, of course, the map, as you can already see, has some field points that are overlooked by buildings on both ends of the map, and there's a lot of buildings in general, a lot of heavy cover, and mostly just the most annoying thing about this map is the river in the center, which makes it pretty hard to cross from one side to the other and makes these crossing points very viable. And of course you need to be very afraid whenever you're crossing that you don't take a lot of damage into the heavy cover. Speaking of heavy cover, here comes Sturmpiles charging across it. And they're trying to take down this poor rear echelon troop, which does not have a line of sight to them because there's no windows on this flank, but they're getting some support from these riflemen. So of course the Sturmpiles are going to have to change their focus to the riflemen, and with an ambulance being brought up by Galleon Squad and another rifleman squad being sort of put up to block these Volksgrenadiers from crossing the river, I think he's going to be able to just hold this position pretty much indefinitely, and I'm thinking that Plop Pop is going to have to retreat, especially since Galleon Squad has access to some heavy cover behind this truck, so overall pretty good. On the left flank, we have Umbakant. He went for a mortar team, so a mortar team is an okay choice right now because there's a lot of course, stalemate action going around this river. So extra mortar is going to be very good to hit the enemy while you're just kind of setting up and defending. So overall, a pretty good choice. In fact, Galleon Squad 422 also going for a mortar, and right now he's going to have to defend himself against the double team, because of course here comes Feda Stake. He knew that he couldn't cross against Umbakant, or I guess he didn't think he could, and then he's coming in to fight Galleon Squad and try to put some pressure up to support his ally, who's right now pushing across the river with some extra infantry, trying to get across to that ambulance and these buildings, trying to deal as much damage to the rifleman while his teammate is so kindly distracting the opponents for him. And in fact, it looks like he's going to have some successes, but these rear echelon troops will be able to get into the house, and that will kind of stop these Volksgrenadiers from being able to take cover into the house, which would have been quite annoying for the allies to deal with. Some Volksgrenadiers do manage to get through and push away the mortar, but at the same time there's some flanking fire coming in from these riflemen from Umbakant. So these riflemen are definitely providing a lot of support for Galleon Squad, and that's going to make the defense a little bit easier. A lot of the German units are actually focusing themselves on the rear echelon troops who are in cover. Not only this is a mistake because they were, again, in a building in cover, so they were taking less damage, but also they were a less important target than these riflemen. So this kind of just allowed these riflemen to DPS down the rest of the units, dealing lots of damage with their M1 Garands at medium range, and being able to provide a lot of work for the allies. Of course, they are bunching up, so a nice incendiary grenade at this point. Yep, in fact, we have Plop Pop going for that incendiary grenade. He has upgraded the battle group headquarters. He has set that up, and so of course he can use those grenades. And at this point, the Germans are the ones holding the house, so they are king of the hill. And at this point, these riflemen are firing into the exposed flank with no windows, but there's also some reinforcements coming in from not only these Volksgrenadiers, but also some Sturmpiles. And the left side, because Umbakant had to push in those riflemen on the right and get some help to Galleon Squad, the left side is completely open, and because of this, Feda Stake, having retreated his forces a little bit earlier and having managed to reinforce them back to full strength, he can now come back into the left-hand side and get a lot of territory. So that is very well done by the Germans, just sort of shifting the attention of the allies into two different fronts, and then managing to actually reap the rewards and capture some points, which is really the most important thing. You don't want your your efforts to go to waste. As in, if you're winning some engagements, you're beating enemy units back to base, you want to take advantage of that and capture territory as much as possible. And right now, these German players are doing that quite nicely. Nice usage of the ambulance from Galleon Squad. He's able to use this building to get some favorable damage trades with the opponents. So he's doing more damage than he's receiving back in this building, because of course he has more cover and he can plop down a lot of fire against the German troops. And then when he takes a little bit of damage, he just heads back, uses the building as cover, and uses the ambulance to heal himself up to full strength and reinforce. So overall, very nice. Although the problem is that the Germans, because of this left-hand push by Feta Stake, they have been able to get their point lead up by quite a bit. They have a triple cap going, and that means that, of course, the Allies are losing points. They're bleeding like a stuffed pig, and that's not very good. Although the Germans are really using a lot of these incendiary grenades, and in fact, they also get a wipe with one of those. Very, very good, but they do lose the Volksgrenadier squad. Not quite the even trade, as the Rifleman squad is more valuable than a Volksgrenadier overall, but yeah, could have gone a lot worse for the Allies if they hadn't gone that wipe. They would be in a pretty bad position. So what I was saying is that right now, as you can see, of course, the Germans have 100 points of lead over the Allies when it comes to VPs, but at least the Allies know that this is happening, and they're very much focusing on getting some more VPs. Very lucky that that grenade then destroyed more of his infantry. And yeah, overall, it looks like the Alliance squad is going to be able to set up an MG to cover this flank, although this might not be the best decision. We've seen that Plop Pop is very grenade happy, and actually Galleon Squad was trying to get his units into this building, which he will be able to, but the question is, will it be worth the price? And probably not, considering the MG is retreating. We have the Lieutenant coming in, but he's very low on HP, so he's going to take a lot of unnecessary damage, and he's taking casualties, and even a support gun shot comes in and actually tries to wipe out the squad. Doesn't get the wipe, but luckily for Galleon Squad, that's going to go down quite favorably for him, because he gets into the building in the end with the Rifleman and manages to get some shots off on the Volksgrenadiers. So overall, it seems like Galleon Squad is losing more when it comes to manpower and units, but he's winning when it comes to territory, and that's kind of showing. At this point, the Allies are starting to get some advantages when it comes to teching, it seems, because we have a flak half-track coming in from Galleon Squad, whereas Plop Pop is still kind of fiddling around with the second Schwer Panzer. Well, I'm guessing it's going to be a Schwer Panzer. And then Feta Stake has the mechanized regiment, but he does have a Lux at least. So he can use that to hunt down the ambulance. He will definitely get the kill on the ambulance, and he might even try to wipe out this Rifleman squad, which is very low on HP, so let's keep an eye on this Lux. But because of the flak half-track's timely arrival, I'm thinking that the Lux isn't going to have success in this. I mean, the flak half-track can damage the Lux, as you can see, so you need to be very careful with that. Lux, and nice usage of the ability to get out of the vehicle for the vehicle crew. That will disable all the targeting on the flak half-track. He does manage to get the last remaining shot in. He also equipped some bazookas clutch on the weapon racks, but it was not enough. So overall, very nice push from Feta Stakes' Lux. In the meantime, it looks like Umbekant hasn't been sitting on his laurels. He's been pushing up and managing to get a lot of map control on the left side of the map. He might be able to capture the fuel point even, and that would be quite nice for him, although some Fallschirmjägers are going to pop in from this house to oppose him. Here comes a nice grenade through the wall, and that wipes out the captain. So that is very not good. Overall, that could have gone a lot better for Umbekant. It was a very nice usage of the line of sight from Feta Stake, because of course he was on the other side of the building, so his opponent didn't know that the Fallschirmjägers were throwing a grenade. He used that to hit his intentions quite well, and that was good. Yeah, it looks like the rear echelon troops are trying to chase down the Lux and destroy it, but very luckily for the Lux, he had gotten in just enough repair from these Sturm Pioneers to just barely survive the salvo from the bazookas, and even the Sturm Piles were able to wipe out the bazooka squad. So of course that's even more munitions that Galleon Squad is never gonna see again. Not the best possible situation for the Allies. They're taking lots of losses, they're being pushed back up to the base, and at this point the Germans are also fortifying up some of the areas that they've captured with support guns and machine guns, I'm guessing, from Feta Stake. No machine guns, that's definitely a mistake. But also the Schwer Panzer headquarters. I would have gone for some machine guns if I was the Germans right now. This is a map that pretty much kind of screams machine guns. You want to be able to control these big, wide open crossing points because they are choke points, but they themselves are quite, as you can see, wide. So if the enemy machine gun is trying to come across, then you want, or the enemy machine gun, the enemy infantry is trying to come across, you want something with a wide arc of fire to be able to suppress them, and that would be a MG34 in the Germans' case. In the Allies' case, it is of course the 50 cal, which Gallant Squad 42 has indeed purchased. But at this point, the MG is actually being very, 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 very aggressive, and that's kind of a mistake. In fact, he's going to lose the machine gun. Yep, that's not the best possible event. Overall, I think that machine gun should have been a little bit more careful in its play. I mean, earlier we saw how it was trying to just rush for this building, and then right now it tried to rush for this building as well. So overall, just a problem of rushing into the buildings a little bit too zealously. And yeah, overall, that's just kind of what I think. There's an Overland squad, however, from Plup Pop. So Plup Pop definitely going for that elite infantry. He has selected Luftwaffe ground. Oh no, Plup Pop has selected Breakthrough, actually. So Breakthrough, of course, with the Jagdtiger later on down the line might be very, very scary. And at this point, it looks like also the left side is going to fall to this Lukes, but there's some Rangers coming in from Lukant. They might be able to deal with the German infantry while the Lukes is being sort of just delayed by the riflemen anti-tank grenades. Nice incendiary prevents the Rangers from getting in too close to these Volksgrenadiers, but the Fallschirmjägers will not have such a luxury as the Rangers get in behind this Kübelwagen, and they're going to be able to mow them down with those Thompsons at close range. Of course, the Fallschirmjägers with FG-42s also are nothing to be laughed at, but they go down in the end. Pretty expensive squad, 440 manpower, going down the drain. This is exactly what you don't want to happen when you're playing as the Fallschirmjäger, or I guess Luftwaffe ground forces, because overall it's just a little bit too prohibitively expensive to deploy Fallschirmjägers and then lose them, especially when you're going to be spawning them into hot zones to I guess just do a particular type of task, fulfill one type of objective. For example, flank an enemy unit and take it out, an enemy machine gun, or for some reason you want to take it down, and then you pop in a Fallschirmjäger behind them. That kind of a spawn, rather than just, oh, I want a Fallschirmjäger, let's spawn them in. If you're trying to do that, then you want to conserve them as much as possible, of course, because of many reasons, especially because 440 manpower is just so very expensive to pay. You don't want to lose them. And overall, it just seems like, yeah, there's a lot of losing of units, even the AT gun being pushed up way too far by the Americans. So the Americans definitely need to be a lot more careful. Even another 50 cal machine gun going down. Need to be a lot more careful with how they use their support weapons. They seem to be pushing them up a little bit too far. Could be a sign that they're not playing conservatively enough with their weapons, and that's kind of not good. But it seems like also the Germans are very, very aggressive this time with their vehicles. Lutz comes in once again trying to do a bit of a drive-by shooting, coming across and getting into the American base. AT gun, come on, just set up and fire. No, use the attack round. You can attack round through it and destroy it. Damn it. That was a little bit of a mistake from Bakant. He could have sort of set up and fired. At this point, I'm not sure if he's going to have the line of sight. No, he does not. He might come in with the infantry and get some line of sight because the Lukes is, of course, suffering from a damaged engine. So that could be the chance for the AT gun to get in and get a last shot in. And there we are, out of control. Very, very nice. Well played by Umkant, getting that last remaining round into the ass of that Lukes. And that, of course, just kind of gives a bit of an advantage to the Allies, of course, because the Germans really were relying on that Lukes to put in extra pressure on the Allied infantry. So because of that, we're going to have some extra, I guess, room for action for our riflemen. And that's another obstacle to the riflemen gone. So, of course, MG34 getting taken out by a grenade, and the Panzer Fusiliers are taking a lot of fire from this mortar. So overall, it seems like the Germans, while they have, of course, superiority when it comes to map control and also when it comes to VPs, right now they're starting to lose some engagements, and so the Allies are getting some victories. If they can capitalize on these victories and then get some more map control going and defend those points, of course, you don't just need to take the points; you need to defend them as well. If they can do that, then they're gonna be in a pretty decent position to come back with the notoriously strong Allied mid game, especially for the Americans, the U.S. forces. If they can use, for example, the Pershing well, or even Rifle Company Easy-8s or Sherman Calliopes well, they have a lot of very, very strong calling units that they can use. If they can use those well, then that means that the Axis, who seem to be waiting for the big heavies, might just lose enough ground to give the Allies more of a fighting chance for later. Right now, it looks like we have Umba Khan trying to flank in and get a cutoff, but he gets stopped by the Schwer Panzerquarters, so he's going to have to retreat, unfortunately. That was a well thought out infantry flank, but overall, it just wasn't meant to be. And he's lucky that these Fallschirmjägers were forced to retreat by some kind of unit. Rear echelon troops. Interesting. So he's lucky that they were retreating, because otherwise they would have definitely executed this poor rifleman who's now running back to base like he was running to his mom's spaghetti. At this point, it does look like the VP situation is even more in favor of the Germans. We have 158 points left for the Allies. At least they're going to be able to steal this MG34. Come on, Lieutenant. You know you want to. Come on, Lieutenant. I know it's what you did in your childhood, the Bronx. Come on, steal it. It's there. You can take it. Damn it. No, let's just leave it there. It's so valuable. So valuable. So good. No. Damn it. So the lieutenant being a bit of a derp and not taking that machine gun might be a bit of a problem. Actually, it might be a huge problem. Well, more than a problem, it's a wasted opportunity. Because right now, as you can see, Galleon Squad 422 has a machine gun on the left, not the left, the right side, covering the right side munitions point. He could also have a machine gun covering the field point and this sort of bridge approach and the other approach. So he would have double the coverage, and that would be quite nice for him. The problem is, at this point, it just seems like the Allies really need to fix this VP situation. And what they're trying to do that with is this Sherman. So Umba Khan, realizing that he can't wait for the 13 CPs for the Pershing. So he goes for a Sherman, of course, because it's very, very effective against enemy infantry. So having that extra defense against infantry pushes and extra firepower to deal with something like this fortified position is going to be extremely strong for him. Even these Fallschirmjägers are going to have to retreat, of course, because there aren't a lot of AT options available to the OKW over here. The Feta Stake does not have really anything too big. He's got a Panzerschreck and a 57mm. Although, as you can see, Plop Pop being very, very much forward-thinking, he sends his Panther to the left side because that's where he sees the Sherman. Now, Galleon Squad right now does not own any vehicles. He doesn't. Oh no, he does have the Major, and he's using the retreat point. But he decided to not go for any vehicles so far, perhaps because he's waiting for a Jackson, perhaps because he's still kind of undecided on his doctrinal pick. But he's going to get at least a wipe off on these Panzer Fusiliers with the Lieutenant. Of course, Lieutenant, very, very valuable squad. You want to use it as much as possible to get wipes with that Thompson, with that amazing DPS. Very nicely done. And at this point, the 50 cal on the right side is just trying to defend itself. He's getting flanked by both Oberstlan and Panzer Fusiliers, and this is going to be the end of that poor 50 cal. It might get stolen by the Germans, in fact, because there aren't a lot of American units in the area that can very quickly recover it or deal with the infantry in the area. In fact, if the machine gun retreats right now, I don't think that these models are going to drop on the retreat if the riflemen can't really chase them. They do try to set up and fire and suppress the riflemen before they can do too much damage, and they will manage to do that, but a grenade falls onto the rear of the machine gun. Will that be enough? I'm thinking so. No. The riflemen retreat because, of course, they were getting pinned, and they're going to leave the dirty job of finishing him off to the lieutenant, but the lieutenant is actually kind of exposing himself with the directional cover, the way this wall kind of works. Can he finish off the MG? He can, so at least he's going to be able to recover them 50 cal, and that's quite good. On the left side, the Sherman is taking some damage from the Panther. But there are two AT guns, 257mm that have set up from Umbikant, and they have not only managed to keep the Panther at bay and the Sherman alive, but they have destroyed the Schwer Panzer headquarters on the other side of the river. So that is a very, very, very well done operation by Umbikant. He needed to take that down so that he could more safely hold the VP and of course also push across the river. And with the two AT guns, he can also deal a lot of damage to this Panther, which right now isn't being microed. So overall, not the best option for Plop Plop to keep that Panther there. Of course, he doesn't really have anything for that Panther to do on the right side either. In fact, he needs some extra anti-infantry, as right now he's going to have to face a rifleman squad who have stolen an MG34 from the Obersoldaten, who were now wiped. So a 400 manpower squad plus a 60 munitions weapon falling to the enemy. That is very, very devastating, of course, for the infantry forces of the Axis players. So the Axis really needs some extra anti-infantry. The Panther right now is very unemployed. It does not have anything to do. There are no real vehicles except a Jackson, which of course was brought out just to counter the Panther, and a Sherman on the left side to counter. So the Sherman is really the target that the Panther wants to fight. But overall, on this left side, we have Umbikant with his two AT guns. So we're going to need to see a lot of crafty movement from this Panther to avoid getting himself surrounded by a rifleman with, of course, anti-tank grenades, getting his engine destroyed, and then that being followed up by a push from the anti-tank guns, managing to destroy the last remaining hit points. And I'm sorry, but right now I need to answer a call. Okay, now, yes, so we have a couple of trash squads over here, the rear echelons and the vehicle crew, getting some bazookas and just pounding away at the mechanized regiment. Overall, just doesn't seem too good a situation for the Axis, but that was a very, very clutch incendiary grenade, managing to save the mechanized regiment. Also, with the support of the M157mm, they might be able to take down the Sherman, but with the support of the riflemen, the Sherman is going to be able to destroy that mechanized regiment. So overall, oh, that's what they were going for. So they were going for the King Tiger. Yeah, I wasn't sure if he was going for a King Tiger or, I don't know, a big other type of unit. Overall, it just seemed like he was going for something big. Of course, his ally is going for the yacht here after the Panther. And yeah, I don't think that this is the best possible decision. I mean, they had a huge lead on the Allies. And then they went with a Panther and then waiting for a King Tiger. So one of those is a unit that isn't all too useful against infantry. Of course, the Panther with the MG, I mean, it does have the pintle-mounted machine gun, but overall, not the best unit to deal with enemy infantry, especially in large numbers, as we see Umbikant and Gallant Squad doing. But then with the KT, you have to wait a little bit too much, and that gave the Allies, as I expected, a little bit more time to use their very excellent mid-game and just get a lot of work done, while the Germans didn't have any vehicles, despite having a huge fuel lead. So overall, not the best, I guess you could say, timetable for the arrival of German tanks. And however, that gets a little bit vindicated by the fact that the King Tiger comes in and destroys both AT guns from the front, and then not only destroys the crews, also destroys the weapons, which is of course very critical, because if you hadn't destroyed the weapons, of course the Allies would have just come in and recaptured those. So we have the Panther being fully repaired, the King Tiger being fully repaired as well. This looks like the prime time for the Germans to just gather both of these vehicles up and advance into one area, schwerpunkt it up, and destroy whatever Allied forces are in the area, just prolonging the game and just kind of letting them use this advantage that they now have with their big vehicles finally on the field. There's only 92 points for the Allies left, so they can definitely just gather up these vehicles, push on one side, capture the VPs on that side, and hold them. They right now hold the left side. If they were able to get out some more support weapons, and of course they have the Schwer Panzer headquarters in the area, they can defend this. Then, if they can use their extra force... Oh, he hit a mine. So he did not go in with a minesweeper. Yeah, that's not the best possible option. Interestingly enough, the Jackson goes down from one hit from the Tiger. All right, there's a Panzer Shrek squad from the Sturm Pioneers, but the King Tiger goes down. So crossing the bridge without any real infantry support, and of course with no minesweeper support, onto a very obvious choke point, possibly not the best choice. Yeah, the King Tiger going down is a huge loss to the Germans, needlessly saying that. Of course, just a terrible, terrible loss. That's a lot of fuel, but at least the consolation prize, both Jacksons going down for the Allies. Although, both Jacksons going down at the price of a lot of infantry on the German side. As you can see, Plop Plop is still kind of healthy when it comes to infantry. He's got a couple of units that are able to still fight, and especially because his opponent Gallant Squad only has 2 riflemen left, plus a lieutenant. So he isn't facing the strongest infantry force. Of course, these are quite vetted up, and they are upgraded with weapons. But overall, it could be much worse, especially considering that Gallant Squad 422 has selected right now Tactical Support Company. So that means that he's going to start to bring out some LMGs, of course M1919 light machine guns, plus of course he's going to have Calliopes later down the line. But on the opposing side, we're going to see a pretty nasty situation for the Germans. We have 2 Rangers, 2 Riflemen, and those are facing just a Fallschirmjäger, a Sturmpile with a Panzerschreck, and a Volksgrenadier. Of course, that Volksgrenadier is quite vetted up, but there's also a Sherman on this side for Umbekant, and there's another Sherman that's repairing, or no, I guess that's the Sherman that died in the last engagement. So overall, not a good situation for Feta Stake. He's really, really behind when it comes to infantry. He does not have enough AT either to deal with the Sherman. Right now, as it stands, all his infantry force could just go down from the single Sherman, not to mention the 2 riflemen and the 2 rangers. Of course, the rangers being incredibly strong against enemy infantry, they can just come in and just murderify the entirety of the German force regardless. And here they come. They take a lot of damage, and can they wipe out the last remaining guy? No, because they do not chase. That was very unfortunate. Gallant Squad 422 saying nope. I wonder why. What is he doing? What is happening on his side? We have a Panther coming through. This MG still has not been reclaimed by any side. That's definitely a bit of a mistake. Pick that weapon up and use it against the enemy. I do not care if it's yours, it was the enemy's. This is war. It's not fair. Nobody's gonna arrest you for stealing. And right now, this guy definitely wishes he had a better raincoat, because he's the only thing that's kind of standing between the American infantry and this Panther's life. Right now, Plop Plop definitely needs to get out some extra anti-infantry. I mean, he does have a Panzer Fusilier squad and a Obersoldaten squad, but he's got 203 munitions in the bank, and he's not upgrading his units with weapons, which is a very, very big mistake. I mean, if he had that MG34 light machine gun, the firepower of his Obersoldaten would be upgraded by a long, long margin. Plus, he has enough munitions also to get a recon package on top of that on his Panzer Fusiliers. Of course, upgrading their damage quite a lot as well. Considering that also the riflemen from Gallant Squad are not upgraded, just like his infantry squads, he would be able to just completely smash them. Well, maybe not completely because they are bettered up, but he would be able to do much better in these engagements, in these infantry engagements that he is currently doing. Right now, he's kind of relying on the M2 50 cal machine gun to hold the flank against these riflemen, but that's not the only thing that's around. There's also the lieutenant. The lieutenant pushes in a little bit too close to the Schwerpanzer quarters, so with that extra line of sight, the Schwerpanzer quarters does get that, and here comes the response, the Calliope fire onto the German position. Unfortunately, it was kind of targeted in a, I guess you could say, poor area. There wasn't really too much in there, and only a Volksgrenadier squad around, but the Volksgrenadier squad managed to just sidestep very, very elegantly, not really caring about the rockets too much. Yeah, right now, the Germans are only saved by the fact that the Allies have lost a lot of units when it comes to the armored compartment in that last engagement. They only have 2 Shermans left, but they have called in their own big heavy, the Pershing. It's not as big as the German heavies, but of course, it's very, very fast, very, very strong with that cannon, as you can see. Thank you, Pershing, for once you were actually about as good as I hyped you up to be. So you didn't make me look like an idiot. Very, very thankful for that. Usually I say, yeah, the Pershing's so damn good, that gun just wipes out everything, and then it just completely misses every time. But right now it is definitely providing a lot of nice work. Another Stern Pioneer squad going completely off the face of the planet and being wiped out by the Americans. Interesting grenade. That could be a very devastating one, but it does not wipe out anybody. So overall, that could have gone worse for the Allies. They're down to 75 goddamn points, as our advisor pointedly told us. But at this point, they're going to be able to capture the center. That's kind of going to change everything, because of course before they were losing points. They were 2-1 in favor of Germans. Right now they're going to be 2-1 in their favor. And that's a world of a difference when you only have 72 points left. That is going to be nice. That is going to be great for the Allies. If they can hold these 2 points, then they're going to have a much easier time in the future, because they've been winning their engagements. Plop Plop has 389 fuel in the bank that he's not using, which is definitely a huge mistake. He needs to use some of this fuel, either for a KT. He does not have a tier 3, but if I was him, I would go for a KT. Or, I mean, at this point, he could also go for the Yaktier, but I think that the Yaktier would be a little bit redundant. I mean, he's already got his Panther. Feta Stake is going for a second KT, maybe. But overall, they need the extra anti-infantry. Right now, what's pushing them back are the Shermans and the infantry just completely smashing their own ground forces. Their Panther really doesn't have the ability to do too much to the Shermans, because at this point we have an extra Jackson coming in from... no, he does not have a Jackson. Still, we have the Pershing around. But the Panther, really, the point is, he needs extra infantry support to deal with the American infantry. If the American infantry can just kind of close in with the Panther and plot down some anti-tank grenades, the Panther isn't going to be able to chase down the Shermans. In fact, it's going to be itself vulnerable to enemy AT guns and Shermans flanking. That's not even to mention the Pershing. So overall, the Panther itself can't deal with all of this. They need something to help take down the American riflemen. And I don't see really any way out other than going for a KT with the excess fuel. But he might, I'm fearing, go for the Yaktier. If he goes for the Yaktier, he's going to be in a bad spot. Because while the Yaktier can definitely deal with the American tanks at long range, I mean, all these American tanks, especially the Pershing, but also the Shermans, they have some very, very nice mobility. So they can flank the Yaktier pretty much at will. And with the pretty bad infantry situation for the Germans, since they lack focus grenadiers and they also lack, in general, they lack units that can use anti-tank grenades, yeah, they don't really have a lot that can stop the American tanks from just coming in and flanking them. Because one, they're not going to have a lot of units getting map control around the map and getting vision all over the map to be able to spot the enemy before they get behind your tank. Even when they get behind the Yaktier, they're not going to have the actual forces around to snare down those American tanks and let the Yaktier escape. So overall, the Americans are just going to be able to, if they're aggressive enough, get behind this thing without too much of a problem. And at this point, yeah, there's even more bad news for the Germans. This squad might go down. No, it does get away. So at least the squad gets out. But overall, it just seems like the Americans are steadily pushing up pretty much throughout the map. As you can see, they have another point that they're capturing on the other side of the river. They have complete control over the left-hand side of the map. They have mostly gotten the control over the right side, at least of the resource points. They lack the VP, which they're now trying to capture. Of course, Lieutenant could use the smoke grenades. He could use the smoke grenades to avoid getting himself smashed by the Panzer headquarters. Of course, now he uses the smoke from the mortar, so definitely a decent little substitute. Where's the mortar? Wait, oh no, he used the smoke from the Sherman. Still, quite good. And right now the Sherman is in trouble against the Panther. The Panther is going to chase across the river, and nothing is going to come of it because of the sort of blob of blob of bazookas coming in from, of course, the rear echelon troops and the vehicle crew. It does look like in the center, the Jagdtiger performed a little bit of a holding action against the Pershing. Pershing has been forced away, taking a little bit of damage, but at this point, because of this, the Allies know that there's a Jagdtiger around. Before, they didn't know that the Jagdtiger was on the field, so the element of surprise for that big German heavy tank destroyer is pretty much gone. And right now, the Allies have managed to secure a triple cap. So what this means is that, of course, getting free VPs, free tickets, draining the second for the Germans. Right now, they have less than 10 minutes, in fact, less than 9 minutes. About 8 minutes and a half to recapture 1 point or another before they lose the game. And that would be a little bit hard if Gehan Squad goes for the second Sherman Calliope. He's already got one Sherman Calliope that can sort of barrage one of the points pretty much indefinitely. If he gets a second one, then he can cover one of these points even more thoroughly. But he's going to go for a Jackson just to be safe against big German vehicles. And in fact, he is kind of right. I mean, we have a Jagdtiger coming in from Plop Plop. We have his Panther, and soon enough, I'm guessing that Feta Steak is going to be going for another KT. One big mistake that he's doing is he's not spending his manpower. He needs only, like, what, 720 manpower to get out of KT, and even if he wanted to get out of KT, he couldn't right now because he does not have the fuel required. He's still going to need around 5 minutes to gather up the fuel to get another KT. So in these 5 minutes, he could do pretty much whatever he wants with manpower. I mean, he's getting 272 manpower a minute. For a 700, again, I'm thinking it's around 740, 720 manpower. I'm not quite sure on the actual price. But regardless of those two, like the actual precise number, regardless of that, with 260, 270 manpower income, you're only realistically going to need about 3.5 minutes at maximum to get enough manpower from 0 to the KT. And yeah, as you can see now, he goes for the KT, and he still has 500 manpower in the bank, even after spawning a Fallschirmjäger squad. So during this time, he could have purchased 3 Volksgrenadiers to gain extra map control on the left-hand side of the map and get a lot of points captured, rather than having such a very reduced infantry force that he has to sort of pick and choose where to go, because of course he only has like 2 or 3 squads, so he has to think, well, I'm going to send these 2 squads to fight, but maybe it's better to go ahead and try to cap something. Then he loses a squad, and he's like, oh shit, from 4 squads I'm down to 3. That's a 25% loss. If he had 6 squads, that would be a lot less bad for him. Yeah, so there is a Königstiger on the field, and so right now, of course, Gallant Squad is kind of patting himself on the back for going with the extra Jackson instead of the Sherman Calliope, the rocket artillery. But overall, it just seems like the Allies have a pretty good field presence. They have basically recaptured the left side. They're going to be able to recapture the right thanks to this 50 caliber machine gun. And the Germans are pulling in their 2 big cats, their 2 tigers in the center. And while that may be a decent decision, because of course you'd want them to be able to support themselves and one another, at some point you're going to have to think, well, I need a lot more units to cover more ground, because at this point, yeah, Plop Plop has 76 pop cap, of which most of that is the Jagdtiger at 21. And then another good chunk must be like 16 pop caps for a Panther, right? There's no Schwer Panzer quarters in the field, so I actually can't check. I think it must be like 16 or 18 pop cap for a Panther. So around 40 of that manpower is actually used in the 2 big vehicles. Feta Steak has 60 pop cap, and most of that is the KT. So we have German players with, yeah, around 60 of their 140 pop caps, so almost half, being essentially tied up in vehicles, so they really cannot cap. They don't provide map control. Whereas, as you can see, the Allies are basically at full pop cap, of which a lot of that, yes, it is vehicles. But one, with the Americans, it's different because they have vehicle crews that can jump out and capture points. 2, they also have a very, very, very healthy force of infantry to back them up, and as you can see, get a lot of map control. Right now, yeah, Can the Allies take on the KT and the Jagdtiger and the Panther at once? Yeah, maybe. But they don't need to. As you can see, they're just kind of skirting around the flanks, not really caring too much for the existence of these German heavy tanks, because one, they're very slow, two, they're not in the flanks. So what the Allied tanks are doing is just sitting in the flanks, allowing their infantry to capture a lot of points, and getting more and more resources, snowballing further and further and further in an exponential kind of way. And at this point, the only problem with that is that the Sherman on the right side is a little bit too overextended, but with the support of the infantry, as you can see, he can ward off the Panther. This is what has been happening throughout this entire game to this Panther, and why I think that perhaps going for a P4 or a KT earlier for Plop Plop might have been a much better choice, because he has been consistently getting just kind of thrashed by the infantry anti-tank. At this point, as you can see, when the Allied vehicles come in and they show their face a little bit too openly, they get destroyed. But with all the infantry that's coming in from the flank and the extra superiority when it comes to mobility that the Allies have, they can get behind the German heavies, hit into their rear armor and then destroy them. So Sherman goes down. Jackson had gone down earlier, but there's a Pershing that's still alive, and there's a couple of Jacksons that are still alive, and they can come in and finish off these two German vehicles that are left quite easily, because as you can see, the Panther can only shoot at one target at a time. The Jagdtiger, of course, he's limited by what he can, how he can turn his big fat body, and then he goes down. And overall, the American infantry is just able to mop up completely. I mean, you'd think that they were, right now, Southeast Asian janitors with the way that they were able to just completely mop up this German infantry. Absolutely nothing left for the Germans, and that's going to be the end of the game. So yeah, that's what I think overall. I think that really the way the Germans used their fuel advantage in the early game was not optimal. It didn't help catapult their advantage into more of a late game lead. It didn't sort of capitalize on their early successes when it comes to draining the Allied VPs and also the Allied fuel income. They were able to let the Americans get to their strong mid game, get to their Pershing, get to their Calliopes, and at that point, yes, they did have the big heavies, but they didn't have the infantry required to back them up. And because of that, at this point, as you can see, they just can't really do anything. So that's kind of my 2 cents, but you may have another opinion. Of course, tell me in the comments. If you think something went differently than what I thought happened, do tell me so. As always, I want to thank y'all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. If you want your replay featured, as always, the links will be in the description. I'll see you soon.